really are taking a different approach to servicing the
market. Hi again. Thank you for choosing N.Y.C. I'm Hilda Broady, your host, and we at N.Y.C. are taking a different approach to servicing the world. I keep bringing you so many different, and today, of course, we're going to do some politics. We have some politicians in here, some candidates, and I ran for mayor in 2013, so I'm really excited about this. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Anna Burnham, who's going to introduce our esteemed guest. Thank you so much. I don't do it because I mess up.
Welcome, candidates. Thank you so much for coming out. Like she said, my name is Anna Burnham. I am the lead organizer for Banana Kelly. With us tonight, we have Julio Pabon, lifetime activist of the South Bronx, Joann Otero, former chief of staff to Carmen Arroyo, and J. Loren Russell, and he is a reverend in the South Bronx. And so thank you all so much for coming out here today. We're going to give you some time towards the end to give your closing statements, but we're going to jump right into questions. Banana Kelly is a community improvement association. We are located in the South Bronx, been around since the 70s. We provide social services, affordable housing, and then of course organizing. And to my right, the two wonderful ladies that are going to be running this interview are our resident leaders, and I will let them introduce themselves. So take it away, Carol.
Okay, my name is Carolyn and I'm one of the resident council leaders, which is made up of residents that live in District 17. The group discusses and acts upon issues related to housing justice. Actions include property management accountability, citywide campaigns to preserve and expand low-income housing, leadership development and organizing workshops, and advising the Banana Kelly on issues pertaining to organizational policies. The questions that are being posed today have come from our resident council. I would like to introduce Wanda, who will discuss the format for the questioning. Wanda, to my right, I'm going to throw it to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Wanda Swinney, and I am a resident council leader. Here we have questions that cover the following topics: housing, jobs, education, and healthcare. For the sake of time and the amount of information we would like to cover, we ask that the candidates stay on topic and respect the format of the interview so that viewers can be informed about your respective stances on issues. Question will be directed at certain candidates, and we ask that the candidates answer the questions directly. You will have 60 seconds to answer the questions.
Before you get started, though, because I'm TBI, that's traumatic brain injured. So I have gifts for my guests. I give you. And as I said, I'm going to give you.
Yeah, right?
Because you may hate me after. I don't know. Throw it back at me. Okay, so even though I'm giving you flip-flops, I don't think you're going to
This question is for all candidates. How do you view your role in working alongside community associations to address the concerns and needs of the community?
Well, that's a very important question, because there are organizations like Banana Kelly that are out there and have been doing some incredible work. And sometimes, unfortunately, a lot of people don't know. And elected officials who are in offices have what I call their pet projects and their pet programs. And unfortunately, they bypass and they don't really pay attention to all of the community organizations. It's really kind of hard not to pay attention to Banana Kelly, because if anybody has been living in the South Bronx, they know how Banana Kelly was started and how it went, and why the name, banana, right? And how it went from one of the most deplorable areas in our community. I remember going through many lots there and playing there, breaking windows there for the buildings that were already broken, to what eventually came about. But what was more important is the fact that it wasn't just providing an alternative, but you provided hope. When people really thought that the Bronx was out, and we went from 107,000 people living to almost like less than about 30,000, I believe it was, and people were just booking out of the South Bronx. It was people like my godmother, political godmother, Valina Antonetti, who said, I refuse to move. And this organization took that type of word into action. And I know you must have gone through a lot of conditions and a lot of red tape and a lot of people who, not a lot of naysayers that say it can't work because you don't have the federal government, you don't have the city government, you don't have the state government.
Yes.
But you guys represent exactly what I believe in, which is you got to think out of the box. And that's why I am they say the anti-county candidate,
Yes.
because I believe that there are so much talent, and organizations like yours are examples. So the question and the response is very easy. I will definitely have an office that will be working, almost jointly with organizations that have already a proven record in going out of the box, because there's a lot more that can be done, but it has to be sustained and has to be supported.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And as Julio said, and I agree with him, that organizations like Banana Kelly have been doing the work for forever, way longer than I was able to serve in the capacity of chief of staff. And very early on, that was one of the organizations that the office of Maria del Carmen Arroyo and I, as her chief of staff, connected with. And we've been very supportive and partnered on many things. Youth programming is supported by that office, and as well as housing developments. You know, there was a project that was identified and they needed a capital funding, and we worked with that office. That office worked with Banana Kelly to make sure that the capital funding went in, so that a gut rehab was done in the development, so that, you know, we can improve the housing stock. And my commitment as council member would be to continue to have those partnerships like Banana Kelly. They don't go unnoticed because they're in the community, and, you know, they introduce themselves to the council member. And very early on, we have had a relationship, and that's one of the organizations that I will continue to have a relationship with. Like others, that they should never go unnoticed because of the work that they do, and I will make sure that it doesn't.
Thank you, Ms. Otero.
All community-based organizations that do work in the community deserve to be recognized. Many of them go unrecognized, they go unrewarded for the work that they do, even though they are significant in their impact in the community. We all know Banana Kelly's history. I grew up in the South Bronx as well, so I do know it well. I remember when it was established and what you did. I had a relative, my uncle used to live on Kelly Street, so I remember that very, very well. But today, there are many other organizations like Banana Kelly that may be fledgling, but they have the right intent. They want to make sure that their communities are developed and they're strong. Nobody wants to live in a bad community.
True.
And so the organizations make themselves available because people just get tired of the same thing and they want different. And so they step up and things change because people say, we just won't take this anymore. And so as city council person, I will absolutely support that. I do it myself. I'm the president of my own homeowners association. I live on Simpson Street, just to let you know. I'm not far from you at all. And so I do understand that, because when we, even as homeowners, we have to stand up and declare that we're not going to take things either. And we have to challenge the powers that be. HPD, for instance, and sanitation, to make sure that we get the services that we deserve. We pay taxes, we're supposed to get those services, and we must hold those agencies accountable to make sure that they're providing the services that we need in our communities so that they are what we want them to be.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
I just have a quick follow-up to that. So we do organizing, and none of you are sitting in the council seat right now, which means that one day we could be organizing against one of you guys for a position that you have taken. How do you all feel about that delicate relationship, about sometimes having opposition coming your way from organizing bodies that are trying to voice out for the community? You can start with Mr. Russell and then go down this way, please.
Well, you can't please everybody all the time. You mentioned that I'm a minister. I am a minister. I'm a minister at 2 churches in the community, both in the district. So I do understand that. You can't please everybody, but you try to do the best that you can so that you can reach an area where everyone is satisfied. Somebody doesn't have to lose so that others can win. There's always a win-win situation, and that's what I always strive to do, is create win-win situations. In my private life, I also have a business, and I do church development and church training. I help them to develop their properties or build their properties or purchase property. So I understand that very, very clearly. But just because somebody wins doesn't mean someone has to lose. And I think if we look more towards a win-win situation, we can accomplish much more as a unified community. We're not fighting against each other. City council persons should not be fighting against their community. They should be working with the community. We may not always agree on how to get there, but I'm almost sure that our goal is always going to be the same. We're always going to be looking to make the community better. And so we may agree to disagree, but at the same time, we're also looking to make sure that we're building something that all of us can be satisfied and happy with, because it's our community.
I will always welcome organizing. It's necessary, and I think that there's not enough of it. So, in the office, that I look to serve, will be an extension of that type of organizing. And it should not be the community organizing and that that it's put at odds with the elected official. It should work in unison. And so I welcome the organizing, and that's the only way that we're going to really know what the issues are. We become council members, and we I think all of us can promise that this is how we're going to handle it, this is how we're going to do it, but we forget that it's not really our ideas that we need to move forward, but that of the community. So that's why we have to encourage the organizing, because they're the ones that are really going to tell us what we need to do.
Collaboration.
Yeah,
Oh, you have that.
I agree with my colleagues, most of the things that they said. I just want to elaborate on the fact that, organizing is a key issue for our community. If we were more organized, there would be probably less problems, because we would be able to hold elected officials accountable. Because I think the bottom line, all the problems we talk about, they all trickle up to one, which is the leadership. If you have a leadership that can take positions and who are not afraid to say what they should be saying and not afraid to do what they should be doing because they're interested in an endorsement or they're interested in their next step in terms of a career ladder move, which is in politics. And that's one of the issues that we have in our community, and in this whole thing about who you know, how you get in. I would like to, that's why I'm organizing against that. I've been organizing against that since I was 16 years old, when I was a young lord. And the fact is that I look forward to differences, because what has helped me grow is the fact that I run 3 little businesses. And the reason I've been able to sustain those businesses when most businesses fold after 5 years, mine's over 20-something years old, is because I welcome differences. I welcome when someone comes up to me and says, hey, I don't like the way we're doing this. We need to do it this way. And I can't say, well, I'm your boss and I'm paying you, so you got to do it this way. I like to hear, and I learn a lot. One of the values that I have that people tell me all the time is the fact that, you got all these young people around you. And when you have young people around you, it says something about you. Because, it's not people 63 like me that are hanging out with me. In fact, I don't have any of my friends 63 hanging out with me. Most of them are dead or in jail, or still strung up on heroin. I have a lot of young people, and young people are very opinionated. And they have taught me how to be able to not judge, but to listen. And as a result of listening, including to their music, including to some of the things that I at first was turned off to, but I learned to appreciate Dead Prez. I learned to appreciate Biggie Smalls. I learned to appreciate Tupac, because I listened. At first, when I heard it, it was like, But when people tell me, did you hear this did you hear this poetic, like saying, wow, it hit me. And I look forward to differences because I learn from differences.
Okay, this question is for all the candidates, and that is, given the proposed phase out of cluster sites, of which there's a very high volume of them in District 17, what will be your plan to ensure that these people who are in the cluster site shelters now secure permanent housing? And I'm going to start with Reverend Russell.
Well, this question of housing is interesting. As you know, the mayor has put a new proposal on the table for developing new housing. It's got some controversies to it, a lot of things, but one of the things I like about it is this zoning piece, where they're going to zone more residentially and offer more spacing to people who are seniors. This is just one area of it that I really appreciate. It doesn't address all of the issues, but this is the one issue. A lot of the people who are now currently in shelters and clusters are really seniors. They're getting older, and they don't have proper and decent housing. Well, one of the components will allow them to develop these senior housing developments where they can have more sustainable living and more affordable housing. And they can do that in such a way that it will actually be beneficial to them, but also significantly impacting in the community. So parking, for instance, when you build multi-dwelling housing, you have to have parking to go along with it, but not necessarily for seniors, because they don't drive as much as those who aren't, which means that they can have more living space, which means that they can have more living space. That frees up more opportunities in other spaces for development of regular housing. So you can develop more housing if you can use the land more what's the word I'm looking for? Efficiently. Very good. Thank you so much. And so when you do that, you're able to do more with less. Because we can't go out. In other words, we can't expand going to our left or to our right. The only way we can really go is up. And so one of the things that I do quite a bit of is work with churches, because churches have what developers want. They have land. And so some of the development that we're talking about churches doing is helping them to develop property. Now, in doing that, it also involves the community, because they're in the community, with housing, which gives them a front row seat and a ground floor level of developing those particular housing developments, so that the people that we really want to serve are being served, because they're integrally involved in the whole process. So one of the things I'm very, very clear about, and I'm very, very adamant about, is making sure that the developers and the developments include the community, so that we don't have clusters that can be phased out very easily because somebody's changing office and somebody's desire in office changed, and so you have to go chasing money. We need to establish these residences so that they're permanent. We need permanent housing. We need housing that can endure. So like Banana Kelly, you guys have endured. This is now 2016. You have endured over the years because you developed housing that was quality. People come back, grandchildren come back. So you need that type of facility. You need those types of housing. So.
Well, the mayor's plan is actually has a lot of quirks to it, and I don't know how to put it in any other way.
I just want to I want to redirect, right? We're talking specifically about the cluster site plan and that phase out that he declared in 3 years. Cluster sites are shelters, a type of shelter, and it does house mostly families, right? So like that, it's a very specific program that we are very concerned about as an organization. That's why we're asking the question.
Okay, but I just wanted to make one mention, then I'll get into the cluster plan. That, one of the things that that plan has is that, seniors, whereas they're, typically right now they're building, they'll allow them to have 400 square feet. They're actually, the provisions are to make smaller units, to make more units. So then the seniors will only get 275 square feet. It's a minor thing that's in it's very major, but people are not looking at it. I wanted to just make that point. Then as far as the cluster sites being phased out, and then there being less of an opportunity for people to get into permanent housing, again, it's again with the AMIs are not affordable. So we're looking to get people into apartments that ultimately they won't be able to afford. And the mayor's plan calls for a 60% AMI, and that's $45,000 for a family of 3, but it's not affordable. So, whoever gets elected really needs to have a conversation with the administration about this AMI that doesn't make sense, because we can talk about permanent housing, but we're going to continue to put people into housing that they ultimately will not be able to afford, and we're just going to continue to perpetuate homelessness and people not being able to afford a roof over their heads.
Excuse me, AMI, please. What is it?
It's the area medium income. I keep forgetting.
It's okay. On the issue of the cluster sites, it's this one of the areas that I think really needs to be evaluated and go beyond what the mayor has been talking about. Because one thing is to talk, and that becomes rhetoric. But the bottom line is that there is a serious issue with homelessness as a whole. And what they do is they come up with all these different plans, and none of the plans seem to work. They all seem to overlap with each other, but the bottom line is you still have families that are in need of serious housing, but they don't seem to be able to have any real direction of where to go. Walking the streets of the district, and unlike I've always walked them, but this time I'm actually confronting people and asking them, can we talk? And I've heard so many things that are incredible, and it all relates around the issue of housing, whether it's the seniors, who are saying that they need to move somewhere and they can't because they cannot find anything that's affordable, or meeting a young woman that I recently met who's actually working and she has 3 children and she's in one of those cluster homes, and basically she doesn't have good access to a kitchen to be able to cook, so therefore her kids are not eating well, so she's doing more cold cuts, and all she needs is just a deposit and a down payment for an apartment that's going to, according to her, she has an apartment for $1,400, but she saw the voucher that the city was paying was close to $4,000, and that's incredible, which that shows something else. It shows that homelessness, just like the prison system, is a business. People are making money off our community.
Exactly.
And we can talk about the issues of clusters. We can talk about the fact that these families don't have a very sound environment that's good for just not only that family, but it has a rippling effect on everybody, because those kids who are not eating well, those kids who are surrounded in that particular area, they manifest themselves in schools. And then they become another issue, because you have schools that have more security guards and police officers and guidance counselors. So you have kids who go to school who have a problem because they didn't eat well, or their mother's not getting home on time because of the things that she has to do, and then the kid manifests himself in school. And it just continues to go on. The culture of health of our community is at a crisis state, and it relates to all of this. And the issue of the cluster homes is very important, because we got to get those people out of those homes. And all people want is just a decent place to live. If they have a decent place to live, when I walk down Fox and I see what Banana Kelly has done, and I walk into some of your buildings that looks like the entrance of a hotel, I say, and I see the people who are walking out. These are not upper middle class people. These are people who provided, sweat equity, people who were able to put, a lot of, of their own sweat into something and be able to take a part of a community. That pride that you see in that particular section, you don't see it anywhere else. But that shows that there's an example of something that can be done. It's real. But if you keep people in cluster homes and you keep them moving them around because someone downtown who thinks they're an expert on issues, but they never relate to the community, they don't relate to your organization, say, can we talk together about what's the next step for homeless? Then we're going to continue to have these problems that are perpetually affecting our community in more ways than one. So we have to find ways to get rid of the cluster homes, like the mayor said, but let's not be rhetorical about it. Let's look at the whole picture and see how we can incorporate all that into a culture of health that's missing in our community.
This question is for Ms. Otero. What programs will you create, or what current programs would you support to help people stay in their current apartments?
The City Council has an initiative called Housing Preservation Initiative. And currently, it's not enough money. But what this funding does is that you designate it to an organization who then partners with the Urban Justice Center or another legal entity. Together, they go in and they organize tenants in buildings where they're in dilapidated conditions, so that we can bring forward either a 7A administrator, which means that we will take they will organize around taking the building away from the landlord, and giving it to a responsible owner. So definitely I would advocate for additional funding, because right now that grant is only $25,000, and it's not enough, because our community needs a lot more. But we've been able to do a lot of work with just that grant. So I would definitely focus on being able to get additional funding similar to that, so that we can bring more nonprofits around the table, so we can have more organizers that can work with tenants, so that we can continue to do that type of work.
If you don't mind, can I, is it okay for everybody to answer this question? Because I would really like to hear.
Yeah, it's up to you guys.
everybody's view on it. You'd like me to answer it?
Yeah, ask it again.
Okay. What programs will you create, or what current programs would you support to help people stay in their current apartments?
Well, I think Joann made a good point. I was chairman of the board of the Community League of the Heights, which is in Washington Heights, and we did something very similar to that. We had a third-party administrator, and we took over a number of buildings in the Washington Heights and Inwood section to do just that. And so that program really, really works. In fact, I think about what happened on Academy in Washington Heights. There was a building that was literally falling in itself. There was an underground stream, and the building was actually on the verge of collapse. We went in, took the building over, moved everybody out into other apartments, and literally got money, partnered with Citibank and several other institutions as well as the city, and we refurbished that building and brought all of the tenants back. They're now back in that building, which was a phenomenal feat. Well, those are the kinds of things that has to happen. The people who were in that building had an opportunity to come back to the same residence that they had lived in before, but they were brand new apartments, totally renovated. So those programs that work, we need to find ways to redirect funds to those programs so that we can keep people in their places and give them not just a place to stay, but a place to stay that is habitable and nice. Just because you're going back to your own apartment, if it's not renovated, if it's not a quality place to stay, why would you want to stay there? And so we want to be able to redirect funds to those programs, and they are to be identified. There's a lot of them out there who do great work. We need to identify them. We need to bolster our resources that's going in that direction so that those programs can be lifted up. We don't have to create new stuff. I'm not a big advocate of just, new because we want to do something new. But we need to find what's working. Put some oil on it, make it spin better, help it to work better so that we can address the needs of the people. Because at the end of the day, these are not statistics that we're talking about. We're talking about people's lives. And if it's happening to one person, that's one person too many. So we have to identify the programs and the services that are being provided that are doing a great job, and we need to support them. And I heard someone say before, we don't have to recreate and start new things all the time because you dilute from those things that are actually being effective. So we need to identify and then fortify those things that are working so that the residents in the communities get what they deserve.
Yeah, I agree. I think most of the issues that we're talking about here now, some of them have been expressed, but the other issue is that, and again, it gets to the bottom line, is in terms of recognizing what's already there. There are programs that, I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I'm not in the city council, but one of the things that I want to do is I want to learn. So one of the first things that I would do is I would have, people like Banana Kelly, organizations like yours, organizations like CASA, that I know they've helped in some of the areas near the concourse, and I'd like to hear from your organizations, like what are some of your ideas? What are some of the things that you think that might be new, but might not be new, might just be to enhance? You might also turn us on to other things. Also, I've learned also when you look outside of our area, there are new things that we could bring in. Like for example, in California, they're doing some incredible work in Oakland, where they have been able to do cooperatives and with community land trusts. That's something that we don't do too much of. And I've been reading about that. I didn't know too much about it, but I started reading about it and I said, wow, that's an incredible alternative. And there are so many other things that we could do because the talent is in our community. It's been proven. You have some incredible abilities to do certain things, but all you need is just to bridge with the resources, with the people that can do it. That's how I always felt as an organizer. I always felt like I'm over here and I'm doing what I can, and sometimes we do good things. Most of the time we've done good things, but it could have been so much greater, man, if we would have had resources of the people who are in those positions. But they never supported us because they didn't like my position on Fresh Direct. They didn't like my position on, the golf course for Donald Trump. They didn't support me because I was, in favor of one particular position over the other. And that shouldn't be the way it should be. It should be some organizations that if they're doing the right work, you should incorporate them into whatever you're doing. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen unless we change the political structure of our issue. That's why I keep on calling it a political revolution, because we need to change the political structure. Any one of us get elected and we try to do something, but if we don't support one of their people who's doing something, trust me, I've been here for 56 years. It happens. That's what we need to check out. And that's why I'm so excited about this particular race. Because this particular race, unlike any other race, is touching right at the heart of the county organization. If one of us win, that's going to be a major problem for county organization. And that's beginning of real change. Because then we can open up to a lot of more things that are going to be blocked out. The fact that the county candidate is not even here, that's a signal. They don't want to deal with organizations that perhaps don't think like them, perhaps don't do what they want them to do, and that's one of the issues that I have with what's going on. So I agree. I would like to, definitely work with organizations. I don't have all the answers. I would be a liar if I told you that I'm going to do this X, Y, and Z, because I don't know. I want to learn. But I know for a fact that not just in our community, but in other communities around the country, some very creative things are being done that could be implemented, and you don't need a lot of resources. All you really need is the willpower to do it. And you guys are the example. When people said that was impossible to do what you did, when you walk through Fox Avenue, when you walk through see the park, and you walk through there, it looks like a totally different neighborhood from what it was. And you're the example, and that's what we need to continue to do.
And for the record, everyone was invited.
And I thank you for making that reference. I'm one of the original founders in Banana Kelly from 1975.
Congratulations.
Okay. But now the question is, what is your specific plan to bring jobs into this district? You know, I also sit on the planning board, and a lot of times these companies come in and they promise that they're going to do this, this, and this. What I really want to know is when the people get hired, do they have a 10459 area code for their address, home address, a 10455, or a 10474? I think those are the area codes for District 17, zip codes for District 17. And I'd like to hear, you know, this one is directed to you, Reverend. What is your specific plan to bring jobs into this district?
Well, let me tell you one of the things I have done. I'm at two churches, as I mentioned. One is Goodwill Baptist Church, and the other is the Grady Universal Baptist Church. The Grady Universal Baptist Church is located on 153rd Street between Park and Morris, right up the street from Lincoln Hospital. What we have done there is we have engaged in a conversation with McDonald's. And one of the things that we've done with McDonald's is we said to them, listen, you're in the community. And this is not the franchises, this was corporate. And what we have done, I've done a program over the years. It started out with just a workshop for men, helping them to see better. It started out actually as a ministry that I did for ex-offenders to help them start their own businesses. Because one of the challenges that we had is that people come out of jail after spending time there and they have difficulty finding work. But if you have your own business, nobody asks you what you did for the last 10 years. They're just going to get the job done. So we started doing that, working with ex-offenders to help them build their own businesses. It began to evolve into me doing workshops in different communities and such. And we had a one-day festival, which we do every year. We had a breakout. We took all the men in the community, took them down to Fellowship Hall, and we did this workshop that I do for these men to give them an understanding of who they are and where they can take their lives. And it was heard about by the women of the church. And one of the sisters said, "Can you do that at my building?" And she lives right down the street at Maria Lopez's housing development. So I went down and I did it with the men that she gathered. She prepared food and everything else, and the ladies left and left the men. And we did that. And from that, it became a mentoring kind of a growth development program for the young men who started that. So we started talking with McDonald's, and McDonald's was saying, "Yeah, but what are you doing now?" And I told them about this ministry that we were doing. They said, "We like that." So what we've done now is we have entered into an agreement with them that we're going to start a training program using McDonald's management training program to develop jobs for people who are in the community. Now we're opening up for women as well as young men and older women and older men, because it doesn't make a difference how old you are. Mm-hmm. Older people need work too. Yeah. But the jobs that we're developing is for management. So line management. So not coming in necessarily to flip burgers. Nothing wrong with flipping burgers, but they need to have a stepping stone to higher levels of earning, because beyond minimum wage, if you don't qualify for a job that pays you better, you can't get paid better. So we did that. So now we have a program. It's literally getting ready to be launched. We're getting ready to do it in a week or so to launch we got a space in Hostos Community College that they created for us. So we're going to do this. We're going to bring people in from the community, and we're going to put them in a one-day seminar, and then it's going to extend over a 6-week period for training. At the end of that 6 weeks, and by the way, at the end of the seminar, they should be interviewed by McDonald's and just McDonald's first for these entry-level positions in management that lead to management. But beyond that, if they go through the longer period of training, then at the end of the day, sitting at the table, we anticipate and we plan to have various corporations sitting at the table to interview these people who have gone through this training program that's stamped with the McDonald's stamp on it, that they went through the McDonald's training course for management, so that they now have a marketable skill from a reputable company. So that's one of the things that we've done. because I feel in my heart that if we don't take this thing by the horns, at our level, whatever we can do, we have to do it. And we have to hold not just people who are elected, not just people who are in public office, and not just those people who are running these agencies that are government funded, but the businesses that do business in our community. They have an obligation in our community to provide work for our residents, because they're taking it out. And for too long, businesses have come into our community, have taken the money and leave. Now, I'm a finance person. I do know this, that money should circulate through a community 7 times before it leaves in order for it to be a healthy financial community. It circulates in our community once.
One time.
Now, with brother like Julio, that's different, because Julio is an established businessman who lives in the community, so he's taking the money that he makes from his businesses, he's taking to the cleaners, he's taking to the supermarkets, so it's circulating, which is what we have to do. We're not doing that. People come into our communities, they establish businesses, they get the money, they take it out to their community, wherever they live. They take it to their communities, and that's where it recirculates. Our communities get nothing. They get no recycled money. That's what kills communities. I've lived in the Bronx all my life, since I was 2 years old. Born in New York, in Harlem Hospital. Raised in the Bronx. I'm telling you, I've seen it over and over again. That's what kills communities. Lack of resources, lack of funding, and people who establish businesses not using their resources in the community, but taking them out, going to Westchester or wherever else they go, New Jersey, and that's where that money goes. We have to be in the community.
Can I ask a follow-up question in regards to
Can I
that?
just one more thing?
Yes, absolutely.
This is my community.
Yes.
I'm not going
Ours.
anywhere.
Ours.
It is
That's
ours,
right.
exactly. And and that's what we have to work this together. So thank you.
So, okay, so just a quick follow-up with that, and I'm actually, we're gonna get different questions, but I'm gonna ask the same follow-up question so you can keep it in mind. So the people that need these resources the most sometimes are the most isolated, right? So we can be program rich, but really outcomes poor, because the outreach around these programs that are coming out just doesn't reach the people it needs to. I mean, like, that program sounds great. I just worked almost 100 hours in the last 2 weeks. You know, I live, in this area pretty much, and I don't hear about it. There's a lot of programs that are like that. So what, as a council member, will you do to fix the outreach gap that we have, so that the word of this great stuff going on gets out there?
That's an interesting question. I think that things like this are very, very good, but everybody doesn't watch this kind of stuff. People watch this who want to know. People who don't have that kind of mindset don't do that. So there has got to be a street level kind of in-your-face thing. Julio talks a lot about walking in the community, and he's absolutely right.
Yes.
I'm a minister. I'm in the community. I'm talking to people. People know me and don't even know that they know me.
Yeah.
Because that's what has to happen. So it's got to be an in-your-face. This is me and you. We're not going. We got to deal with this. We have to deal with this for what it really is. It's an in-your-face. We have to do this, and holding people, talking to young people. I'm not afraid of young people. I'm not afraid of them because they're in a gang. What? Come on, that's nothing new about that. So why am I afraid of them? I have something to offer them. They're doing something, trying to find themselves. Well, I can help them to do that. So I can't be afraid of somebody that I can help. So if we take that seriously from every level, and if we go after it with enthusiasm and with the intention, with intent, we can absolutely solve this thing. So to answer your question directly, it takes really an in-your-face kind of a movement. So I would like to have an office that has a lot of people that are not just on telephones, but actually walking the streets, talking to people, inviting them and going out and interfacing with people at every level of the society, especially at the lowest rung.
Great, thank
especially
you.
there.
Thank you.
I would like to just elaborate on that question, because that's a very key question. And you asked a very good question, because jobs is a fundamental aspect of a community of health. If you don't have a job, then a lot of other things affect you. And I think we need to be very creative about this, but it has been done in the past. I worked in the 70s with a program called Recruitment and Training Program. It was with Ernie Green, Alexis Herman, Dorothy Height, Bayard Rustin. They were able to get funds from the Department of Labor to help us do exactly that. because in those days, unions, majority, the building trades council unions, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, steam fitters, iron workers, it was always majority white. And the reason for it was, and you didn't need a high school diploma.
Nope.
All you needed to know was somebody in the union.
Yeah.
So it was always father to son, father to son. So our program got funded, small little program, to basically go out into the community, into the face, and be able to tell people in the handball courts, in the churches coming out, in the shopping malls, that you can make this much money if all you have to do is fill out this application. And then when we try to do that, then the unions got hip. So they basically gave out the applications on a particular day, but they already knew it was like they only had 100 applications. So you had like 100, 200, 300, 400 people show up. So we started learning is, okay, when the application is going to come out, and we would go there on a Friday, and we would we would rent the Winnebago, and that way people can go to the bathroom, and people would actually camp out. So when that happened, all first 150 were all black and Latinos. And we were able to begin to get our people into the construction trades unions. The amount of vacant properties in our district is about 40%. That's huge. There's a lot of gentrification that's taking place. Developers want to come into our community, right? There are some projects that we ain't gonna do anything about because they've been already approved from the state level. For example, my most interesting one is 3 Metro North stops in Hunts Point. Who's that for? But yet it's a $1 billion project. Let's not sleep on that, folks. It's a $1 billion project for 3 train stops on Hunts Point.
So
right?
are they utilizing the minority
Well, this is my point.
initiative?
This is my point. This is my point. When deals like that get cut, folks, and because I work for the federal government, I can tell you, contracts have already been, ironed out. That deal did not go through for $1 billion, and they're going to start doing the RFPs for who's going to do this one. People know who's going to get what. What I would do as a city council person is, you want to bring in this much money to this community, you want to do 3 train stops, which is another issue later on, because I know those train stops ain't for the people who live in Hunts Point, because first of all, there's not that many people living in Hunts Point, and so it's one of the smallest areas, right? And the people who live there are not going to pay $7 to $12 to take a train to Grand Central. They just can't afford it. When our median income is $22,500, right?
Thank you. Honesty.
So
I'm sorry.
who is this for? So that's another issue. But you know what? Like what happened with Yankee Stadium. We could not stop. We could not stop a deal that's been cut at such a level, right? But what we could do is we can force these developers that you come in and learn from the Yankee experience. The contract in the Yankee contract was developed by the county attorney, and Mr. Schlein was the one that developed the contract for the community benefits agreement for the Yankees. But the contract, if you read it, it says 25% workforce, best efforts. The Yankees will make best efforts to employ 25% of the community. The Yankees will make best efforts to provide 25% of the contracts for our community. What we were able to do in the 70s and 80s was that we were able to force the language, because language is very important. If you say set aside, now we're talking business.
Thank you.
If we can say set aside. So one of the things I would push for when I would look at these contracts, I say, wait a minute, it's not make best efforts, because you already got us on one. You fool me once, it's on me. You fool me twice, hey, that's something else. So the bottom line is we need to look at these contracts, because every developer wants to come here, wants to be nice with the community, right? So why can't we develop programs that not only you're going to hire our community from these area codes, that we will have a monitoring system that's not the developer, because by the way, Mr. Schlein, later on, guess who he does? He's a consultant for who? For the Yankees. He's a consultant for the Yankees, and this is the person that wrote the contract for county. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's going on there. We have to learn from the past, because if we don't learn from the past, we keep on repeating it. You got a $1 billion project coming in here. We need to learn from that experience. There should be an outside monitoring services, maybe with the community organizations, where we can have people like, from Banana Kelly and other organizations that can make up a committee that you can oversee those jobs. Who are the people coming in? But I'll take it one step further.
what I would do as a city council person is we will work with the contractor. I ain't got a problem with you coming in here, but you got to hire people from this community. And one other thing, you're going to have to spend a little bit more money from your profit. And they're going to have, what's that? You need to train them. And we can work something out with the unions, because I'm sure, because we have the context. We can talk to electrical union local 3. We could talk to 638 steam fitters. We could talk to the carpenters union and say, hey, you guys, you know, one of the problems you have is that we don't have enough of our workforce. But do you know that in the western part of New York State, they are dying for electricians. They're dying for carpenters. They're dying for a workforce. We have so many kids here who are unemployed that if you were to do like what we did in the 70s and go into the schoolyards and go into the churches and go into the places and tell people, yo, you could be making $55 an hour. So there are programs that we can definitely do, and the history has shown it, but it's like, it's been erased. So people saying we'll try something new. No, that's not new. It worked before. We just got to find the resources to put them together so we can train our own youth, because we don't have, all the trade schools have closed. Nobody's training, you know, electricians no more. Remember Gompers? Remember Alfred E. Smith?
I sure do.
Remember Stevenson? Jane Addams?
Yeah.
Where are those programs now? So we can, this is a direct answer to your question. How would we provide employment? Let's find a way to train our youth for jobs that are existing here, and you don't have to bring people from outside of this country to work when they are here, but we're not training them.
So,
Can I chime in just because?
so I wanted to ask you, did you want to take jobs or did you want to take a question on education? Because we have 5 left.
I can be very brief, just because I'm only going to take a minute.
Okay.
Because he touched upon something, and education, you know, it's going to be a combination of, you know, we always talk about job creation, but there's just not enough of a conversation about job training. You know, so we can create opportunities for jobs to be created, but then we don't have a workforce, you know, and then we're always, you know, people getting off the trains from other boroughs to come into our borough, and they're the ones who get the jobs, because they're the ones who are, you know, who actually then are trained and qualified. So, you know, I would focus on absolutely supporting more programs as far as job training. The other thing that he said it was, and he touched upon it, is schools like Alfred E. Smith. But it does exist. Alfred E. Smith, the campus has a school called Bronx Design and Construction. And one of the things that we were working on is that we went into the school and we started looking around, and the workshops are still doing, they're still doing the same, you know, they're doing the training for electricians and plumbers and all that work, but it's on theory only, because the workshops are dilapidated and they're just not training them the way they need to be training them. So we need to make an investment in programs such as, you know, this school, so that we can have a workforce, because the mayor's plan, one of the things that you touched upon, does not have any provisions for MWB companies to have a fair share of all that construction that they're proposing $7.5 billion of affordable housing, but there's no provision for that, and there's no provision there for the infrastructure that's going to be needed. You know, so one of the things that I would do, because we're all talking about all these great programs that exist, but nobody knows that they exist, is, you know, you go to a hotel and they give you this thing, and it says these are the restaurants that are around here. This is, where you can go to the movies. This is where you can shop.
A guide.
But you know, these homeowners all this housing that's created. One of the things that they have to do, not just for the newly created, but you know, we have to create something like a guide that lists. And I think that as a community, working with the elected officials' office, we can create something that when people move into the district, they get this guide and they know this is where you go for these services, whatever they may be. And, you know, it could be on the internet, something that can be managed, and we can work out a plan to create something that then people can look at and say, this is where I go for childcare, for training, for whatever it is, for whatever services in the District 17.
Suppose a person like myself wanted to create a program, let's just say people in our communities, and it's geared for people that's coming prisons, being incarcerated, and you create a program that's geared for programs within a program. Let's say carpentry, culinary arts, like, you know, different things within a program. How do you, as a community, go about, you know, collaborating or us getting together to make things like that happen? If somebody had those ideas.
That's a good follow-up question to what Ms. Otero just said. You know, like, there's a school that's doing that, right? But if that school is not connected to the industry that provides those jobs, guess what? None of those kids are going to get a job. None of those kids are going to get a job. And that's why I go back to the past. We need to look at where the real power is at in terms of developing a program that can go through. If you can convince, and we could, just like the whole concept that I agree with Reverend Russell, which is if you have businesses in the community that are there, they should be providing more. Well, unions are the same way. Unions have a lot of members, you know, who they represent, who are in our community. Some of them are in certain areas. Some of them have made good money, and they probably have homes and stuff like that. But they're always looking for a recruiting source. And it's also a good end of year, you know, like goodwill, put on their, you know, annual report that they've done something in the South Bronx. So I'm sure there's a lot of ways we can entice unions to say, even if it's just 5 kids, even if it's just 5 kids, if we train them, give us the curriculum that you want an apprentice, because an apprentice goes in with 0 knowledge, right? You don't have to have electrical knowledge to get into the union. That's what an apprenticeship is for. So we can go to these unions and develop something with them, give us a curriculum of what you would like to see for this young man, this young woman, so then you can consider them, at least for an apprenticeship.
So we're gonna have to, we are at our hour. So for the last thing, we were gonna do this in bullet point, which is not political fashion, but I wanna hear 3 brief statements as to why people should vote for you. Brief, I'm gonna highlight brief. So can we start with Mr. Russell?
Number 1, the things that we're talking about, I do them. I do them every day. The job creation, the educational opportunities. I went to Smith, by the way. I want you to know that. I graduated from Smith. I took automotive and didn't have a job because it was during the oil embargo, so there was no jobs available. But nevertheless, I think that's right. There are 2 areas of education that's important to me. You've got education vocationally, and then you got scholastic education. Not everybody can do the scholastic piece, so we have to have the vocational piece to complement what people can do who are scholastically able. And then, of course, the third piece is that holding not only those people who are responsible for using our monies, that is the agencies that receive our monies accountable, but also the businesses, as I said before, who do business in our community, that everybody has a role to play in making sure that our community is very much provided with the services that they need. The jobs are there, the housing is there, and it's for the benefit of the people in the community. I'm not against people coming in, but our plan has to be, when you get here, you have to become a part of our plan, not the other way around.
Very good.
I'm homegrown. I've been in the 17th Council District my entire life. Born and raised there, I'm still there. And I love my community, passionately, so that I will continue to serve my community in this capacity, or whatever the future brings me. I was a PTA president, and I know, and I'm very passionate about the education of our children. And, you know, that's gonna be one of my priorities. And as a parent, I know how difficult it is, you know, to entrust in an educational system that sometimes our kids are being educated in places that we talk about dilapidated housing, dilapidated schools, educational settings that are not conducive to living, let alone to the educating of our greatest assets, our children. So I'm very passionate about schools. I'm very passionate about housing, about keeping housing, quality housing for those who stood here. Who, you know, when everything was tough, they didn't move out. I was one of them. We didn't move out. We stood there, stood our ground, and I want to fight for my community, for my neighbors. I also, you know, one of the things that I'm very I'm concerned about is that we don't have enough women representation. I'm gonna tie it up because I know we don't have enough women representation, and I have the experience that, you know, I can bring to the table. But I also think that it's very important that women have their share of representation in the city council. There are only 14 council members left, and next year there's only going to be 1 female representative in the Bronx. And, you know, that worries me. That worries me for the women of our borough, as much as it worries me for the women in the city, that we need more representation. I am experienced. I am passionate. I've been doing the work for 11 years. And I look forward to continuing to serve my community. Thank you.
I basically, same thing.
probably the senior in terms of the candidates that's running. Been in the South Bronx all my life since I was 4 years old. Raised myself from extreme poverty, raised 3 children in public schools, all successful, all working around the country. Run 3 small businesses, work for the federal government, state government, city government. Experience-wise, I mean, I can tell you like some of the programs that I was working with and some of the programs I'm working on now, but I think we've already expressed the point. You know, we definitely believe in that. Now, what I want to say to the voters out there is the fact, do you want to keep what we have at present? Do you want to have a different name, but it's the same game? You know, a new hairstyle, but it's what's in the brain is the same. You know, we need to really take a different move. We need to move out of this culture of electing people that are appointed. Look at who's supporting who. Look at those same leaders that were there. If you believe that those leaders have done something to improve some of the questions that came here in terms of housing, in terms of homelessness, in terms of job creation, in terms of schools, then you know what? Don't vote. Stay home. Keep it alone. But if you believe that the Bronx, the conditions down in Longwood, South Bronx, in the areas of North Mont Haven, in West Farms, in Melrose, in Tremont, the area that encompasses the 17th district, if you believe, like I believe, like I've seen, that conditions have not gotten better, on the contrary, they've gotten worse. Yes, we got nice buildings that some of our community cannot live in. If you're tired of people who just keep on taking pictures of a shovel digging into a new construction site, if you're tired of just seeing people take a picture cutting a ribbon for a building that they can't move in, or for a job that's going to create minimum wage, but not prevailing wages. Everybody talks about $15 an hour. Well, folks, let me give you some big surprise. If you want to survive in New York City, you need $22.50.
Or better, yeah. Or
If
better.
you think that what we have is not what we need, then I urge you to vote for me, because I am the person who will bring those changes, because I'm not interested in a career in politics.
And with that, we go out of town. I want to thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the gift.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for the
Okay.
flips. I'm going to try
And
to
when you talk
they'll
about
fit
the-
me.
When you talk about
Thank
the schools, I was a director of garrison training and placement. We taught people how to fix automatic transmissions, because again, nobody cares if you were in jail for 10 years if you can fix my transmission. Unfortunately, the landlord's son didn't pay the taxes on the building, and they sold the building out from under us in 10474, right there on Garrison and,
I know it well.
okay, so, and there were jobs at the end of it because the owner of the school also owned Garrison Transmissions, so they had jobs. And we were trying to set them up in business as
That
well.
works. That works.
And it unfortunately didn't work out that way. But I want to thank you again for choosing In My Shoes, and we're going to keep doing this. Thank you so much. See you next week.
Yeah.
In My Shoes, we really are taking a different approach to servicing the world.
Wham got a message for you. Check it out. I've been less offended by the boxers or the sagging pants in our community. I got a song for you. Check it out. Here we go. Come on.
Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up.
Yeah.
It's the new style.
Come on, Colette, talk to me.
Say, Mr. Harris, sagging jeans is an epidemic.
That's right.
One that I've never been a fan of. And I can't stand how these young men, they sagging, they dragging. Come on, pull your pants up. And I know us girls, we in the wrong for not putting these fellas on.
You got the power.
But I'm offended by boxers. And I think that we all should be.
Come on, help me.
Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up.
Why?
It's the new style. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up.
Yeah.
Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. It'll make your mama proud.
Here we go.
We living in a world affected by an epidemic. Sagging jeans and sweatpants is how men living. Need to set the example to make the future right. So hear our message when we hit you with the chair. Right?
Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. Pull your pants up.
It's kinda catchy.
Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. It's the new style. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. It'll make your mama proud.
I know you heard your belt say. You know your belt was talking to you this morning. Said, come on, just take me with you. I just want to help you all day, keep your pants up. I just want to throw myself around you and hang out with you all day long. But you know what? You didn't listen, so now we're going to have to tell you this. Come on, say it.
Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. Pull your pants up, pull your pants up. It's the new style.